Lyons.
Here.
Tom Mattia.
Here.
Nick Rivers.
Here.
Casey White.
Here.
Okay, if everyone would please stand and join Nina Delis in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, you had said that we open up the public hearing.
Okay, we will now, as we begin our meeting, we're going to have call our public hearing on the FY 2012 budget. Are there any particular comments that anyone has on our budget? We will be addressing this in the business part of our agenda, and we will have some discussion on it prior to our vote. But this is the time for public participation on that specific topic. Seeing none, we'll move into the public participation and public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. We do have one card this evening. Mr. Dave Andrews from 630 Karen Avenue. Dave, come on up, please.
We understand.
Anyway.
Okay. Just a little formal. I was just wondering if there was any word or any updates the board could provide on the FFAC committee. I know there's been some meetings in this past summer, and there's been some kind of rumors flying around as far as the realignment, the 7th and 8th grade model. I know even one principal has already supposedly told the parents that we were going to a 7th and 8th grade model. So just want to find out, just publicly here, officially from the board, kind of where things stand, just an update.
Well, we will be having committee reports. Thank you, Dave.
Which is next?
Which is next. So we will get right into that next, okay? And Tracy, I'll let you cover that, and then other board members can add what we have. As you might be aware, we have tasked the FFAC committee to look at various cost savings options to bring back to the board. And we asked for that to be brought to the board hopefully by the end of this calendar year. At that time, we would then have public meetings throughout the community to receive input and so forth. In my understanding, and I'll let Tracy clarify it, as he represents the board on the FFAC, to kind of give his opinion of where we are right now. But specifically, it's to it's not looking just at cost savings, but also potentially how we would maybe use some of that state grant money, which would provide, if we invested it well, it would provide savings to the district over the long term. So those are some of the tasks that we've given them while maintaining the integrity of their curriculum and best practices and all those kinds of things. So, go ahead.
Well, I think to specifically address your question, what I'd really like to see you and others do is not rely on rumors at all. There is a lot of work being done and a lot of things being discussed. Some of them might be considered extreme, some of them might be considered not worth talking about. The reason why I say that is that the job of that group is to try to find solutions to cover our operating deficits, and as you know, that's no small task. I'm actually, those of you that have reviewed the budget, I'm actually pleased we've gotten things as close as we have in the operating deficit for this year, given the way things have evolved with state reimbursement and a number of other things. When the Finance Committee does come forward with its recommendation, there will be all the supporting documentation and numbers that will reinforce why that decision may have been the lead option. There will also be a time throughout the coming months where there would be public participation in visiting that recommendation and get a feel for where the community is at with this recommendation. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that's going to happen quickly. I know Cindy and Andrea and a number of others are spending a lot of time putting together different scenarios of how we might best operate this district as efficiently as possible. And the 3 or 4 main goals here were to not only bolster our educational ability, but to do so in a way that was maximized our efficiency of our existing facilities. And to follow that then would be to do so in a way that was most efficient and desirable for the families in the community. We have a couple of options out there, and like I said, one addresses 1 or 2 of those really well. Another addresses all of them really well, except for convenience and or the impact of families where they might end up. So before we would speculate as to what things might look like on any recommendation, we will finalize those numbers and have very hard numbers to back that up, and those are being compiled now.
Yeah, I appreciate the concern about speculation, because I agree, I don't like to speculate or hear the speculations. It's just that when there is someone from the administration that does say to a group of parents that we are going to a certain model, and that's like the first we've heard of it, it does make us kind of wonder, like, okay, are there truths to some of the rumors we are hearing? So that's the only reason I brought it up to the board, to say, hey, if you could address this and provide some continued communication, that could help fill that void where there is uncertainty and angst about what is going to happen. So that's all I wanted.
Well, and I think that principle probably would have been right on target had they said we are looking at this as opposed to we are. And you know, it's always little things like that that get construed into something totally different from where it's headed. And we haven't shared much yet because there wasn't much concrete to share. I mean, literally, it was a blank sheet of paper. We started with a long list, and we've slowly done away with various concepts or thoughts, and we're migrating down to a very small list of options. And then once those hard figures are in place, then we'll be able to give a very strong recommendation.
Great.
And just,
Is that fair, Andrea?
Yes.
when is the next FFAC meeting? They are open to the public, too.
They are absolutely open to the public, and I encourage you to come. Cindy, our next FFAC.
Well, October 4th, we're doing another working meeting with the subcommittee to go
Okay.
through some more details. So that's on the 4th here at 6:30. So we are inviting people to attend in order to do something with that process. And tentatively, the next open meeting or everybody meeting would be October 10th. So I've got a lot of emails from other people that are interested in being in it, so I will know
Good.
definitively.
Very good. Jessica?
At all possible, if on our website for the upcoming events, that we can actually list, not just that committee, but all of our committees, so they are open to the public. So that way people can actually see when they are, what time they are, and the location that they are. So we can put that on the website. And also,
Other committee reports and board members? Jessica?
Mr. Tyler for the grant, and Jim Briscoe is there as well for Tyler Elementary. Last week we had curriculum night at Little John, which also was fantastic.
Good. Anything else? Good?
I wasn't able to attend the first curriculum meeting, so I don't know if Dr. Moeller wanted to speak about Curriculum Council.
Our first Curriculum Council meeting, we went through what is called a SWOT analysis. That's SWOT for, it's facilitated by Kevin Fuss, who's an Associate Vice President of Kishwaukee College, where we analyze the committee's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And from that, we sort of narrow it down and prioritize and look for common themes as to what some of the issues are. And so that was summarized, and actually Kevin summarized all that himself, went through all that, sent it to me, and we'll be disseminating it out to the committee. But so there was no business in terms of approving or making recommendations to the board for curriculum. We wanted to get the SWOT analysis out of the way. When the minutes come out, we'll have a few minutes to type the minutes. there were some very good insights that came out that I think will allow us to move forward in a much more productive manner.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our presentation. Tonight we have an update on the Ombudsman program from Jessica Stewart, Heather Wallach, and Dan Ox.
Correct.
Very good, I got two of them. So, floor is yours.
Great. So just important for everybody to know, Dan and Heather have been with us in the district since we endeavored on doing some partnering with some alternative education options. You're probably aware that we do have some other partnerships with some other groups, and those go very well, but we've recognized 5 years ago and a little bit prior to that that we were not meeting the needs of every student at the middle school and high school level. We really needed to expand our options to look at some more creative ways of providing education to students. So that's when we connected up with Ombudsman, and tonight we're going to be going through a little bit about what's different in their setup and what our results have been with the students that have been participating in that. So we're five years through our current partnership. We have 2 more years on our current contract. So. Actually, you can keep going, Cindy. We can talk a little bit about some of the changes.
Oh, sure. I'll start with the Common Core because that's what everyone wants to hear about first. We started last year and we transitioned all our high school math and English to the Common Core. With that, we increased our academic rigor in all subjects. We introduced new grading system and introduced course syllabi. And that serves as our accountability to ourselves, to the students, to the parents, and to the district as a whole. It's detailed documentation which shows the work the student has done, the standards they worked on, and the grades they got and everything they did. And that's accessible to anyone who would like to see it. We also included benchmarks last year embedded into all of our core curriculum, which allows us to assess how they're learning as they're progressing through that individual course. Year 2, we began to implement new instructional strategies to really maximize the Common Core shift. Really taking what we did with a more defined focus to make sure students are understanding the content better. And we're doing it in earlier stages as they're progressing through their lessons. So instead of waiting until after they take the test, we make sure that they're prepared before getting to the test by putting in simple checks. We also included more benchmark tests and more subjects. We changed our assessment tool. We used to use BOSSI assessment, which assessed the students when they entered and when they exit, so we could measure their growth. We switched to STAR assessment, which will allow us to do it quarterly, so we can actually work with the students and check their progress at the quarter. And it's also easier for the students to work with and easier for staff to pinpoint deficiencies. So we moved from BOSSI, which you'll see some data on, to STAR. So next year you'll see STAR assessment as how we're tracking progress, and that's mainly in math and reading.
Well, I'm going to refer to the previous slide real quick. In addition to the work students do on their course syllabi, we also have a life after investment curriculum that we follow, and we give students support in the areas of college and career preparation. Basically, our life after ombudsman curriculum was designed to help students prepare for and apply to colleges and apply for financial aid. Most of our students come to us not knowing how the process works and not having support in their home lives to take those steps, so they get that at the center. And all graduating seniors are required to do a senior portfolio, which includes those elements, and they're supported by center staff in completing those tasks. And it's nice when they graduate, they have a portfolio that they can, it's, number one, they understand the process and how much goes into applying for jobs and applying to college, and then they have that to take with them to actually use in the real world. So it's very.
And we'll be uploading that onto Naviance, which is the program we use for that, so students can access it years after they leave us. It'll always be there for them. and they get updated as they move on with their career or college. We have had reading intervention in place for 3 years now using Reading Plus and Lexia. The data shows some really good results, especially in math. When we're looking at our reading intervention, we look at all subjects because it's supposed to affect all subjects. And the one thing we notice is that our math scores have been going up each year. We strengthen our reading intervention. And that's mainly because a lot of math that they're tested on are word problems, and students have trouble understanding the question, therefore they can't do the answer. They might know how to do the math, but they can't get to that point. So improving their fluency and comprehension allows them to understand the question and then get through the questions quicker than they were in the past. We changed some of our technology that we will be using. We have a condensed day. As you know, it's 3 hours a day. Students come in and they work the entire 3 hours. And we want the students to be exposed to as much as possible. As you saw some of that, like that they're ombudsman, we want to do some pro-social skills. We want to work small group instruction, focusing on building skills that are necessary for them to be successful students, both in high school and post-secondary. Skills like note-taking, test-taking, summarizing, how to use different graphic organizers. And that's a lot to do in 3 hours. And we have our reading and math interventions as well. So we use technology as a way to make it efficient. And what we started this year is using Podio, which is our learning management system. And this will take us a few years to get to our end goal. But what it will do, it will connect all of our systems together. They will communicate and be able to pull data from each other. So for students, that means they're going to go to one location to access all their information. Their student syllabi will be electronic instead of paper. They will be able to see their attendance, their progress in the courses that they're making. They'll track their progress as they're going through the course and give them the course grade for it. They'll also be able to connect to every student and every teacher in Unplugged. So if a student was having difficulty with a math question, they could type that in, and a teacher from a different state would be able to help that student, someone who's very proficient in math. The teachers at the center can do it as well, but sometimes the student just likes to type and communicate like they would on Facebook. And that's what that does. And it's monitored very closely, so anything that goes on there, everyone sees. So I'm able to answer questions for students because I get alerts when those come up. And then we also are moving to virtual desktops, which will allow all the computers connected to one server. So we'll have one server in Nashville, our secondary one will be in Libertyville, and we'll have a third backup as well. So this will reduce technical issues by a great deal. It will allow students to spend more time on task and give teachers more of an ability to be with the students and working with them.
And then with these systems, he touched on a few of these already. These are just the programs we use in the center. We use Reading Plus and Lexia as reading intervention programs. They help build skills like fluency, comprehension, and in foundational literacy skills like phonics and word meanings and categorization. And students are programmed into those based on where they test in with the assessments that we offer. A Plus and NovaNet are the primary platforms that we use, and those are what the students, it's the programs they work in to actually do their coursework. They have to go through lessons and take notes, and then they do practice and mastery tests as well. And within that, there's room for one-on-one help from instructors and also teacher-led instruction, group work. But those are the primary platforms that we use. Discovery Education is we use it for like the enrichment activities.
that students do, and it's primarily videos and quizzes, or they might take notes, or we might have a class discussion about it, but it always ties into the work that they're doing in the primary programs. And then STAR is the assessment program that we use that you mentioned previously, where it just tests their math and reading skills, and we do that quarterly to track their growth. And STAR is good because it breaks down for each student their areas of deficiency, and it gives us materials that we can use to help work on those areas of deficiency with each individual student. And then Naviance is the program that we use for Life After Ombudsman. It actually stores all of the, like when they do a resume or a cover letter, they scan it to Naviance and save it in there, so it's always accessible in the future. So if they lose the copy that we give them, they can sign back in and print out another copy. And then Study Island we use for PSAE, test prep, and then the math and science labs we use to give them that more hands-on experience. And then the enrichment activities I mentioned briefly, basically students have to do computer lessons with us for each of their classes, but for every few computer lessons we also do enrichments, and that could be anything from videos and quizzes, essays, group discussions, scholastic magazines, teacher-designed activities. It enhances what they're getting from the lesson, so they're not just doing computer work. We like to say we offer like a well-rounded experience. And the pro-social skills, we do skill streaming. So we work on everything from how to handle frustration to dealing with anger, and the career and college prep also ties into that. And we have community speakers come to the center. We've had parents come in and talk about their careers. We've had Everest College just came in last week and talked about the process of applying to college. And we've had colleges come in and talk about just real-world job skills. And we also have the students participate in community service projects every year. We've raised over 200, one year we raised over 200 pounds of food to donate to the Northern Illinois Food Bank. We've donated time and money to Tails. We've had students actually volunteer to physically do community service at Tails. We just like them to, like I said, to have a well-rounded experience and to feel connected to their community. And then the senior projects are just, the students do their portfolios, but they also have to research a career and give a presentation on it. So we get a lot done in 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. And then we'll end with just the data we show you every year. And it starts with attendance, which has always been above 90%, and again, last year was at 92%. Graduation rate for the first year dropped below 90% last year. 4 students who were scheduled to graduate did not make it to the end of the semester. They left us 2 for attendance issues and 2 for behavior issues. And our credit earned dropped to 85%. It was always in the mid-90s, and that is due primarily to the academic rigor we instituted last year. Students were still earning over 3 credits per semester. However, they weren't earning as much as they were in the past simply because they have to spend more time in each subject now. And student enrolled, that's just a reflection. Last year, we increased by 5 slots, so that just indicates that increase. And the BASI test scores, this will be the last year you'll see that. It's kind of hard to read, it's all scrunched together. But DeKalb students consistently show growth in all areas. Last year was the best year for the math application computation, reading plus, for reading comprehension, it was tied for the highest score. That year prior to that, it had the same growth. Vocabulary, spelling, and language mechanics were the second highest of the 4 years that we've been there. And then questions.
I've got a couple. Okay. How do you determine which students participate in this program?
We actually make those determinations. Each of our buildings has like a SAT team or a student services team where students that are struggling are brought up for discussion and problem solving. And moving to an alternative education site is one of the strategies we use when students are really struggling in a variety of domains. So we actually are making those referrals to Ombudsman. So it's our determination.
And I'm embarrassed to even ask this, but where's the location where this is conducted?
On 6th Street, not too far from the old Farm Bureau building, across the street.
Okay, I know exactly what it is. Okay, now I know.
We,
Sure.
oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, we host twice a year graduation ceremony, and it really is worth the time to come. The students actually give a testimony about what ombudsmen have done for them, and that's where you really get the power of the kind of the life-changing events that happen for students that, despite our best attempts, isn't finding success within our schools, and we are partnering with them to see some of the things they saw. So.
Okay, so my question is that when the students are placed there, do they have the choice to come back out? As we know, RTI is fluid, so is it an open door thing? Because you said it's part of the problem-solving piece of the intervention. So can they go back to the regular school if they're test-worthy?
We don't ever force an alternative education placement, and we find that most students, when they get there, find a lot of success, and that tends to be where they stay. Like, you'll see the retention rates for ombudsmen are pretty strong, but there are students that do get there and it's not a good fit. And usually we've already kind of exhausted what our options are within the school district. So then we're looking for some more creative means, and that's when we tend to partner with some of our other alternative education schools that we have. But that really is a very slim number. We have found that ombudsman works for a variety of students. They offer get ahead opportunities in the summertime, and so even students that aren't struggling have the opportunity to participate in more of a technology enhanced curriculum that kids seem very drawn to.
I did see also that reading, math, and science were addressed, but do we also address like geography, history, all the other electives as well?
Yes.
And then what assessment tools are you using so that way we know that they're properly being assessed?
All right. We do offer all the subjects, major subjects, social studies, sciences. Students will be taken with us. They're electives too. We align our courses to the Illinois State catalog, and we check them against that before we go ahead and give it to the student. We also check it against the district course catalog to make sure they're learning the same things. What we do to assess in those subjects is we check their benchmark scores for the ones that have them. They'll all have them eventually. And then what we do is a making the course syllabi, which is pretty much the entire course. And it's broken down, there's a pacing guide in it, broken down into 2-week chunks, in which the student works on, so they know where they need to be. In each chunk, we detail the students' grades in it, and then we check that against reports that we can run. So the check their product is more through the benchmark testing, and then we assess them at least every 2 weeks. I mean, we assess them every day in every subject, but every 2 weeks it's.
I was going to add that they get daily assessment just because there's 3 teachers in the center. So like if the student is stuck on a lesson for 40%, they're obviously not understanding it, and that's when a teacher would step in and do one-on-one intervention or pull aside 5 kids that are on like that geometry lesson and are stuck and do a small group intervention. So, and then we would do an alternate assessment.
And to add to that, one of the early intervention strategies I mentioned, we don't want the student taking a test before we know they're ready, is really reviewing their notes and really making sure they're understanding as they're working on their lesson. So students are required to put the lesson objectives on their notes for subjects like history or science, where you're looking more at state standards and they're a little bit shorter. You might be putting the state standard on there as well. And all of the standards are listed, the numbers on the student syllabi, and then we have a booklet where they could go and look up the standards. And then we look at their notes to see what they're taking notes on and connecting those notes to the objective and the standard if it's on there. And then at the end, they do a summary, and then we look at the summary, the notes they took, connecting it to the objective, and at that point, they are able to take a practice test. And then after the practice test, they'll take their final test. And then there's other strategies we use if they're still having trouble with the test. So we don't want students to keep putting them back into the lesson to take notes over and over again. If they're having difficulty, we already determined that it's not the note-taking process. They have to do something else that we have to explore. then that's what we do.
So, help me understand I understand KEC's role from the non-vocational side of KEC. How does this fit into that and the path the child may take?
In terms of the kind of student that we might identify to go there, because it is a condensed day, it's 4 3 hours. It's very intense. But when you're there, you're working, and when you're done, you're done. So students that might have obligations to assist in supporting your family, students that might be parenting, students who have a high level of skill, but that longer day with expectations outside doesn't fit very well, tends to be a student that we do really well at the lesson. That's not to say that our students that are also struggling with those skills wouldn't as well, but a student that is only engaged in activities with us for 3 hours, we are looking to make sure that they can productively do things with the rest of the time that they have other things to do. Like, whereas Casey would provide that whole day programming, we've got 3 solid hours going on. With good results, though.
And we'd like to add that most of our platforms are available online, so some kids, if they do require more time in a day, like some kids can't get everything done in 3 hours, they can access A+ and Reading Plus online. We have check marks in place to make sure the work they do is legitimate, but most students are able to get the work done in 3 hours, but it is because of technology, they can access those supports at home if they want to continue working at home.
And it's also very much self-paced, so, because each student is working with what's being presented to them on the computer, so they can move ahead or they can go slower, and that reinforcement is really based on what their personal need is, as opposed to more of a traditional classroom, and that's harder for our teachers or whether, in such a streamlined manner.
Other questions?
I do, I'm sorry. My thing is the data team meetings, when do you start to see, to look at progress to see if they are making it or not, or whether we pull them, or if this is too intensive or bring it back, or when do you actually do that? But the school district side, not on the.
Well, they're sharing data with us. Whenever a student's dipping down or our students are doing really well, we're getting notification of that instantly, and we have a team at the high school level that goes over to our buds and start doing problem solving, or to meet, like we have a counselor assigned just to students that have buds.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that communication piece is really strong.
Very good. Jessica, Deanne, and Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. Okay, we'll move on to our non-business consent agenda. It's been recommended the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda, items A through G. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Colin Barnes,
Yes.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Jessica Lyons,
Yes.
Tom Mattia,
Yes.
Mike Burbeck,
Yes.
Tracy Williams.
Yes.
I do want to just point out there are a couple of things embedded in these that, one, we sent down some of our kids down to the FFA convention down in Indianapolis. And also our marching band has been selected to attend the Sugar Bowl. And they'll be judged and performing. And they'll probably be doing some fundraising. So,
Yes, we will.
So, but anyway, congratulations to those young people. Business consent agenda. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve business consent agenda items A through C.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Roll call, please.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Jessica Lyons,
Just step out.
Tom Mattia,
Yes.
Mike Burbeck,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Colin Barnes.
Yes.
Passes. Business and finance, we have an update. I think, Tammy, you were back at our meeting in mid-August to talk about attacking the communication radio issue, and you're here to give us an update.
As promised, just wanted to let you guys know we have had the opportunity, Connie, Brian, and I, to meet with several vendors. Well, I should say we've talked to 3 vendors. 2 of them have scheduled meetings, and we've been able to ask them various questions and look at different options that are going to fit our infrastructure. They're coming back with their quotes in regards to the possible radios that we can purchase that will work with our current system. And while we're waiting for that, Connie and I have been meeting, we're met with about half of the principals, and and we'll be meeting with the other half of the principals tomorrow to determine how many radios are truly needed in each of the buildings. We've discussed various schedules in regards to sharing of radios with morning staff and lunchroom staff using the same radio, after school staff using PE radios since the PE teachers will no longer need them and those type of needs. So we've been able to reduce where we currently stand on the ICOM radios down to more reasonable numbers. That's also going to include a discussion with our high school staff in regards to how many radios they currently have, because if you remember, they have all motor turbos. So we'll be reviewing that to see if all of them that are there are actually needed, or if we can use some of those at some of our other buildings. And at the same time, the administration building will be looked at via the center to see how many radios we really need to have in this building. So we can reduce what our proposal will be coming to the board. The plan is to bring that proposal to the board at the next board meeting as an informational item in regards to the vendor that we are recommending. The vendor we recommend will also be present at that board meeting, as well as the one that comes for approval in the second meeting in October.
Thank you. If I read your information right, it sounds like one of the vendors has a more reasonably priced radio.
They're both, the two vendors that we've been able to have good open communication with, they're both within reasonable prices. They're not that far apart. One of the vendors we don't feel has the service department, enough people within his own staff to service our potential needs. And if you remember, Dixon Ottawa is our current provider, and there's been some changes with that company. It has been sold to another radio company who's been in business for over 20 years, and actually further if you consider the previous father and grandfather that owned it. But the same service tech has been in place this entire time, and that's really been one of our strengths with this company is Kevin is our service tech, and he has been extremely responsive and probably the most informational, providing us the most information on the radios since we bought them last year. The individual that we had some miscommunications with in past years, our past year is no longer with the company. He's the gentleman who sold the company. So we have a little bit of a more positive outlook on the company that we're currently working with.
We look forward to your report next meeting. Okay, we now move into approval of our 2012-13 budget. Andrea, do you want to provide an update?
Yes. So this evening, I'm just going to highlight for you some of the changes that have been made to the budget, and then you will be taking action on actually adopting the budget for this year. So since we last met, there has been some growth in our enrollment, of which we've had to add some additional FTE to our staff. So that's just notifying you that we did add 3.6, and actually that number is going to move upward a little bit as we missed, I think, about a little less than one additional FTE between two different areas. General state aid is, an interesting topic, because things are changing and evolving on this, as last year was the first time in many, many years that they did a proration on our general state aid, meaning that they kept the per pupil dollar amount the same for school districts in this formula, but then informed us that they would not make payment, the last payment to our district, which was a little bit above $225,000. So this year, in calculating the formula, we have the numbers in front of you. The original budget amount that we had incorporated in here was $10,791,408. Now all the numbers have settled. You send in all your final reports, and so the final calculation is an upward movement of $11,258,955. So it's an additional $467,000. But don't get too excited, because the next slide, after all of that, general state aid will be prorated once again, but only at 89%. So the end result of that is that we are actually losing $1,370,000 of general state aid money for this current fiscal year. Now, in calculating all of this, when this is placed on the state final numbers sheet, we have to place our revenues and our expenditures, and in the event you have a deficit, you have to make certain that that deficit, if you do not have the required 3 times of that deficit amount in your fund balance, your school district then has to file a budget reduction plan with the state. So if we move to the next page, just quickly, going through all of these changes, at the end of the day, we now have moved our budget deficit from 2.6 million down to 2,379,000. So if you would take that number, and basically when you have to fill out the form for your budget to the state, you need 3 times that amount in your operating fund balances, and then you do not have to file a deficit spending plan. So if we move through the next pages here, all these numbers, and I'm not going to belabor you with all of these, as you can read them, but they've been adjusted for the amounts that I just highlighted for each of these funds. And then if you move to the next, again, just a reminder of how that pie is split as far as our operating revenue. And then the next slide is all the detail with the expenditures. And the next slide, again, the pie broken down. And the following slide is where you see your revenues and expenditures. And that $2,379,000 deficit there. Now, again, this is excluding that construction money because we've been watching our budget with it and without it. But the minute you have a deficit like that, what the state watches for is to make certain that your fund balance is at least 3 times that amount. So if you move on here, you will see down toward the middle of the page where it says total operating funds, $7.6 million. That puts us just frankly about a few $100,000 above the benchmark of when you'd have to file that plan. So we're still sitting in a good place right there. And again, just to remind you, that excludes the construction grant money. And then if you move on to the next page, this is our true fund balance with that $21 million in it. So the total operating funds are $23,773,000 in fund balance. And the next page just shows you that pictorial view of the revenues and expenditures, and then the line which displays the fund balance. Again, that shows you without the construction grant money. And then the next page will show you with the construction grant money. And then that concludes. Any questions?
Real quick, so it's just we have the $7.6 million fund balance, not including the $21 million.
Correct.
We have $23.7 million fund balance with it in there.
Correct.
21 plus 7 is 28. So what am I missing?
What was it?
Well, if it's 7.6 million without the 21 million fund balance, but it's 23.7 million with it, 21 million plus 7 million is 28, but we're showing it as 23.
Well,
So what am I missing? Is it because there's 5 million over in the capital projects
Yes.
fund?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important to note that due to the due diligence of administration and some of the action the board's taken, this could have been a lot worse. I think we cut over $700,000 worth of items this past year. If we did receive our busing money, which is cut to the tune of $800,000, and we received our 100% of our GSA, we would basically have a balanced budget. So I feel like while it's difficult to pass this type of a deficit, I felt like we've addressed it the best that we could for this year. And kind of echoing Tracy's comments earlier. It's very difficult, I think, for any of us that balance our own budgets to try to have to pass a deficit like this. But I think it just represents where we are with our state finances, and we are paying those consequences. So.
Absolutely. And that is a good point. We are actually in the 4th year of budget reduction plans. So this is one of the years that it is, when you start reaching budget deficits as we're looking for, it's extremely hard to turn the dial after you've already made all those reductions. And now the impact truly would be students. Because we have done it as much as we can that was furthest away from the students, and that's always the focus. Wherever we can make any of those reductions, we certainly have. And we have restructured the office here administrative-wise all the way down to support staff and all others, custodians, everyone feeling the pinch of a larger body of work. So we've done all the reorganizing. As you said, I think the FFAC committee is taking a very proactive approach, and while some people may think it's moving a little slow, they have put in an enormous amount of time trying to understand school funding before any decisions are made, so that we do move cautiously and hopefully present to you a good plan in moving forward.
It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve and adopt the 2012-13 budget as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Discussion? Tracy?
I have just one thing, and it's from Mr. Andrews. Thank you for sticking around to see this. So as you hear rumors or discussion throughout the district, this is a great example of why you're hearing such things. None of us up here take this lightly, and we will be discussing, or have been discussing, all options, some severe, some not nearly as severe, but this is why. So the only thing I ask of you is that when you're in those positions out there, if you hear something like that, maybe you can help us by encouraging these people to attend finance committee meetings and school board meetings and get the same information, because it'll be helpful.
And highly encourage them to reach out to school board members.
Absolutely.
Just to get the answer they need. And if we don't have it, we'll definitely be able to direct them in the right place. But the most important thing I think all of us here want is factual information being disseminated to everyone in our community, because ultimately we're all in this together.
Absolutely correct.
Roll call?
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Mike Burbick?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Budget passes. The final item under, the third item is approval of copier contract. Andrea?
Yes. Again, another hot topic. At least internally it has been for us. But we did break this down into 2 phases, recognizing that there have been some ongoing issues with our current service provider, and thoroughly examining moving forward where we should move toward. What we did last year actually is we gave a service contract to another vendor at the high school who has been servicing their machines, and we reshuffled some other machines around. So after meeting, and Ben and Brian here have spent a great deal of time talking with many copier folks, the end result of this is that we would like to extend the contract to the vendor who is currently servicing the high school, R.K. Dixon, and allowing them to recondition our existing machines because we are done with our lease. And in doing that, that will happen through the month of October. We will be reassessing maybe perhaps some more appropriate places of where to put additional copiers, or to move around even some existing copiers that perhaps have been a little beaten up at some locations, to a center that will use them less in certain areas, because we have them throughout departments. So the 2 phases of this, the first phase is to move forward with R.K. Dixon to allow them to recondition and service us district-wide. The second phase will come after the reconditioning. We will re-examine and then come to you perhaps with some additional needs on where to place more copiers. And I believe, Nina, you have asked for a breakdown. Okay,
Thank you very much, Andrea.
you're welcome.
Any questions for Andrea? It's been recommended, motion made that the Board of Education award R.K. Dixon a contract to recondition our current fleet of copiers for the cost of $9,500 and to provide us with a total care and maintenance contract for a 20-month period, the amount of 51 cents per copy, 5 cents per copy, 5.1 cent per copy, with our existing copies.
So moved.
Whatever.
Sorry to spit that out.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Roll call.
Mike Burbick?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Colin Barnes?
Yes.
Nina Montana?
Yes.
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Motion passes. Architectural services. Dr. Briscoe.
Yeah, this is just information. One of the things the FFA, well, actually, the board initiated this a while back. They did it, this building appraised, and actually at the same time, we had the land appraised over by Fairview. And this building ended up being appraised at $1.4 million. And one of the things in this whole idea of looking long-term to save dollars so we don't have to cut programs is to look at consolidation. And the FFAC has been presented with this option. At Huntley Middle School, the old high school, there's an entire office area and classroom area and old dean offices above the present offices at Huntley that are not being utilized. And it would be very much adequate space for the offices here. And so FFAC has heard about it and talked a little bit about it, but I think it's tough to come and make a recommendation without what would it cost to actually make that move. So I'm asking the board's permission to not spend a lot of money working their time with an architect, but to sit down with an architect to see what minimally we could do to move our offices, because that could take place any time if the FFAC would recommend it and if the board would ever decide to do it. After looking at that area up there, it made some real visible problems that we've had here with staff and professional development really seem larger, because there's a space up there where there's 2 classrooms in the middle back to back that have all the technology and lab space that would create a great professional development for our staff, because we have frequent at all of our different categories: custodian, maintenance, certified staff, secretaries, assistants. They have staff developments all the time. And the other issue is there's not adequate parking out here. So that alone would be real advantageous to look at. So I'm asking you guys to give us some time to work with an architect to get some more detail and a more serious cost estimate to move us. There's also opportunities, once we know that, to look at some grant writing, to look at if there's anything available at the state, to talk to the city of DeKalb and see if they're, who could help us fund a project like that. And then you also have this space available that could be sold. And so it's just a preliminary look, and I'm asking to move forward to give that input and that more specific information the FFAC is looking for, to get that back to them as soon as possible.
Comments, questions? Anybody? Go ahead.
I know during the referendum that was discussed quite a bit about the additional space that would be available at Huntley and what could be a possible use of it. And I remember heads nodding around the room about possibly this being a good idea to make that relocation. I don't know what architects are available in the area, but as much as we keep the job local would be fantastic.
That would be the idea here. And I wouldn't want to go outside.
I think before we take any action, we have to know what kind of costs are associated with it. So, is there consensus of the board to move forward with this?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Okay, the last item on our agenda is salary placement advancement. Connie, we're required by the state of Illinois to release all salaries of administrators, teachers.
Yes, this is an informational item for you, and it's really a salary and benefits placement report. This report has always been required by the State Board of Education, but beginning this school year, they changed school code by amending it, stating that before we could submit it, it had to be presented to the board at a regular board meeting. It used to be due the end of June. It is now due October 1st. So the data is actually from the 2011-12 school year, which is why you may notice that there are some things on that report that are no longer with the district. One thing that I do want to comment about is when we are reporting base salary for this report, that is for payments for all duties performed as a school district employee. So if you have a teacher who coaches 3 sports and has 2 additional differentials, the payment that they get for that is added into the base salary for this report. So like I said, it's always been a report that has been required, but starting this year, due to amendment to school code, it has to be presented to the board before we can submit it to the state.
So this fulfills our requirement, just to review it? Okay. So done. Jessica?
I thought years had to be on there as well. Or
Not for this particular report. A different report. For this particular report, it's just what was on the spreadsheet. FTEs, number of sick days, number of vacation days, benefits, any type of bonuses, and their base salary. Okay. So there's a different report that requires that as well, which will be later on.
Okay, and that was the one that has to be disclosed to the public.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, agenda building, Jessica, I know last meeting you talked about the ombudsman program, KC. We weren't able to schedule KC for this time, but we're working on that. Anything else for the good of the cause?
NIU partnership update?
Yeah, look at it too.
General, how things are going?
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, Jessica, excuse me.
I'm not sure, but if we could possibly, I was just reading a lot of research on board policies. I know that we get recommendations, however, I was reading research on how boards should be auditing their board policies to make sure that we keep up with the current trends, that because of financial things have changed, and that maybe we should have some type of audit or create some type of committee to just thoroughly go through and look. In addition to, I know RTI and stuff has been looking at that family empowerment piece. And they say, look at your board policies to make sure that they implement or at least encourage parent participation, involvement, things like that. So we have a family-friendly policy.
Okay. Mike?
Speaking of fundraising, 5 o'clock this Friday at DeKalb High School, we're having a chili dinner fundraiser for the marching band. Join us and celebrate homecoming with DeKalb Barbs.
Well, homecoming this week, so have you seen parade downtown DeKalb?
Right
A lot of fun?
Main Street.
And always a big week for your kids.
And Huntley is going to have its first ever tailgate party, 2:45, 3:45, I believe, to get
Still
everybody
coming
set
to
up.
the parade though, right?
I can't make that one. I'm hoping to be at the parade. That's why I'm back in town.
All right.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Board